Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews. Let's get into the show.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews, the show where we talk about really cool stuff like the environment, as in this episode. My name is Deji Bankole. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Akindele Bankole, the other host.
So today we have Sabs Katz, who is a Brooklyn-based advocate of conscious, intentional, and holistic living. Sabs is a co-founder of the climate justice organization Intersectional Environmentalist, where she currently serves as the partnership's lead. She is also the content creator behind Sustainable Sabs, a platform that aims to inspire and empower others through the mediums of low waste living, slow fashion, veganism, and wellness. This is a very perfect guest for this show. So looking forward to this because, we haven't had anybody on here who was environmentally focused yet. So I'm looking forward to sort of getting into some questions about that and sort of pick her brain about a lot of those things that we haven't seen yet. So without further ado, let's bring her on. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are y'all doing?
That's awesome.
We're doing good. So welcome to the show. We were just saying that you are the first person on the show that's talking more realistically about the environment, which is really cool. And we haven't really had a guest on here like that. So I'm glad you're here. But for those people who don't know who you are, do you mind just giving us a little bio?
Yeah. So my name is Sabs. I use she, her pronouns. I am a co-founder of a climate justice organization called Intersectional Environmentalist. And I'm also the content creator behind my platform called Sustainable Sabs, where I talk about low waste living, veganism, sustainability, and then just general holistic wellness, intentional living, stuff like that.
Yeah. So where did your interest in sort of like the environment and sustainable living, where did that sort of stem from?
Yeah, it actually kind of went in tandem with my vegan journey, I will say. So about, oh my gosh, how many years ago at this point? About 8 years ago, a friend and I were about to move in together. We were still in college, our junior year, and she had suggested we try out this low waste, zero waste lifestyle. And we were only going to do it for a semester, but I was really against it at first. I just thought it was seemed very impossible. But after a lot of the initial habit changes, it ended up becoming a lot easier than initially I had anticipated. And I really appreciated the slowness and the intentionality of the lifestyle. And I felt like it went kind of in tandem with the vegan lifestyle in terms of just being really intentional about what you consume and about the things that you purchase and the things that you support. So that's kind of how my entry into the environmental space began. But over the years, I've definitely continued to educate myself more about sustainability beyond just individual action, to learn about climate justice and environmental justice, and ways that we can take action in community with one another and on a larger scale. So yeah, that's kind of the beginning of my journey and the evolution of my journey, and I'm excited for it to continue to evolve, but that's where I'm at for now.
That's great. So I guess so as you've been sort of growing in knowledge, has there been anything that's been very surprising as you've learned in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of different things. I think that there is not so much that surprises me nowadays. I feel like as I was learning about a lot of different things with regards to environmentalism, things were starting to kind of come together. I think one thing a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of these I'm going to say systems of oppression and injustices in the world are very interconnected. So whether it's environmental issues or social justice issues or gender equity issues, a lot of these are really interconnected. And so when you are working towards a more just environment and ensuring the people who are most impacted by the climate crisis are the ones who are at the forefront and who are making those decisions, you realize that you're able to more positively impact all of those other issues of gender, of ability, of race, of class, of so many other things. And so when we silo ourselves into these very specific areas of passion, I think we do ourselves a disservice. And by approaching things from a more holistic standpoint, we can really begin to see change. We can build community with one another and really build momentum amongst all of our, I guess, passion areas.
Do you feel like there's a lot more lines that you can connect? I mean, as in there are a lot of patterns that you've seen in a lot of different sections of this, right?
Yeah. So with our organization, Intersectional Environmentalist, we were really inspired by the work of Professor Kimberly Crenshaw, who coined intersectional theory and really uses that framework to identify, how people interact with the world based on their identity. So for me, I approach the world through the lens of somebody who is a woman, somebody who is Jewish, somebody who's white. And so all of these different aspects of my identity make it either easier or more difficult to navigate the world. So I face, issues of, sexism and patriarchy and stuff like that, but I don't face issues of racism. So being able to approach with those different compassion and the different lenses helps to really bring people together and help people hold empathy for one another. And I think it really provides an opportunity for us to build bridges together.
Yeah. I grew up in a mostly white household, with my mom. And I feel like, in the past probably 10-ish years is when I've sort of really started understanding more about intersectionality and my journey, excuse me, from my perspective, and understanding that, that I have a different perspective than other people based on the type of person that I am. How do you sort of marry that with, I guess, environmental impacts and how do you marry those two?
Yeah, so no individual person is ever going to be able to properly understand another person's experience. And so when we look at the people who are facing the brunt of the climate crisis and who are on the front lines, it's largely people in the global south, largely low income people, BIPOC communities. And so when we create space for and amplify voices of people who are on the front lines, we can better equip them and we can better support them to help themselves versus somebody like myself going into a community that's not mine and telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing. Because who am I to say that I know better than somebody who's lived in an area their whole life? So I think by, recognizing where you're at and recognizing the ways that you can amplify other people or support other people, whether that's through using your platform to share about different issues, or if you have the financial means to donate to mutual aid groups, we can really, approach from a place of respect and mutual aid versus a place of saviorism or something like that.
Now, with intersectionality, it would appear to me that everybody is dealing with intersectionality in some way or another, right? It's just to the degree with which it serves or not serve people. So in other words, and how do we bridge the divide where we say intersectionality is privileging some people over other people? And how do we bridge that divide so that we're able to actually have this conversation across the divide, so we can all, as a collective, come to some solutions that will help, get everybody to have better equity.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of setting your ego aside, because I think there are people who don't necessarily want to acknowledge privilege or believe that privilege exists. And I think that I said this a couple times already, but I think community building is a really beautiful opportunity, because it, when you look at your community, whether it's your friends or your neighbors or people who you are at church or, wherever it is that you go, people that you can interact with in real life and who have like some level of respect for you versus just like a random stranger on the internet, it's a lot easier to bridge those gaps and have that space for compassion and empathy. There's always going to be some people who truly just don't care, and I feel like those people are a little bit difficult to speak with. So sometimes it's not necessarily worth using your energy, but I think there's a lot of power in storytelling and genuinely listening, because again, you can never fully understand another person's experiences, particularly those who have different identities than you do. So like, you all might not ever understand what it's like to be a woman, and I will never understand what it's like to be Black or biracial. And
Right.
so like, it's not my place to tell you what your experience is. It's, the goal is to really, like, again, hold compassion and hold space for different people's stories and realities. And by bridging those gaps, we can find solutions and use one another's privileges to amplify those solutions and support those solutions. And I think that's how we can really kind of build change together.
Yeah, it is interesting. Because I know Kimberly Crenshaw. I don't know her, but I know of her, Kimberly Crenshaw, on intersectionality. But how? Because I also know that, at least in my opinion, I think critical theories, is almost a reverse of tribal cultures in a sense, because it's asking questions as opposed to giving answers, is what I think critical theory is doing. And I think I wonder, what questions do you think the theory of intersectionality is asking at the moment, and do we need to create communities where we are engaging those questions, and depending on the intersectional issues that we're dealing with, who would then be in that, community to be able to grapple with those questions so that they can go away with something for themselves to heal themselves or to become better.
Yeah. I am not super familiar with tribal theory, so I don't want to speak to it because I'm not super familiar. But with in terms of the questions that intersectionality asks, I think it's obviously about the questions that you ask one another, but also it takes a level of you kind of healing your own self and like healing that ego that might say like, oh, well, you're assuming things about me, or you are looking at me in a particular way, but you don't even know me necessarily. So I think it's a level of, hey, what can I do to better understand other people's experiences, versus like trying to speak over them or trying to assume, what they're thinking about me, or what they, what their life has been like. So, it's both the internal reflection questions. I think that a lot of times, and this is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but I think not there's a lack of connection to one's emotions and one's experiences. And if we create more holistic versions of ourselves and heal ourselves from a lot of, pain, difficulty that we've experienced, it provides space for you to have that compassion and listen to other people and have a little, if you have a little overflowing cup of love inside of you that you can provide to another person, that again continues to build bridges and build community. So looking into yourself, but also asking the questions of like, how can I support you? And sometimes it's not necessarily about asking a stranger that you don't even know, hey, how do I support you right now? But doing your research and finding different ways that you can support people or support different causes, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's also interesting to me, and I appreciate your response to that. Because I'm always trying to figure out what are some basic ways that we can help people grapple with what they're doing. So how do we section it off so that we can say, okay, I'm going to deal with this part of this theory or this question, and then deal with that other part. And it seems to me like there's a survival part, because I think often the survival part is that whatever we are doing either in the Constitution, in our laws, in our society, that it's affecting a particular group in this way and privileging this other group in this way. And so it seems that there's a survival question, but I also think there's also a sociological question, like, do you like me? Do you even accept me? How do you see me? Type thing. Do you see me at all? So I'm not quite sure. I think it seems to me like there has to be some way that the questions that we're asking, be it in intersectionality or just in critical theory in general, that there has to be a way that we are dealing with questions of survival as opposed to questions of just social acceptance. So, for example, if I'm surviving extremely well, but I'm not socially accepted, it might not be quite a big deal for me because maybe it might give me a chance to actually go meditate. If I have all the means that I need, I'll be able to actually return to myself. I can actually see me. Often when I'm moving about, I almost think I'm an incognito full human being, because maybe depending on the environment that I'm in, much may not be expected of me being a very dark Black person. So much may not be expected of me, and it gives me the freedom to just be myself, as long as nobody's trying to hurt me for being in the space that I'm in, that I can actually almost in plain view, almost meditate as I'm walking. If you know what I mean, like I can disappear actually into myself and actually discover myself and actually have some self-reflection, excuse me, some self-reflection. But on the other hand, clearly, if I'm not seen or I'm ignored, that may, of course, be a problem in a different situation if it affects my survival. So I totally get it. So it's sort of overlapping the social acceptance with survival needs. Like if I'm not socially accepted, that it may affect the way I am going to survive. But if I'm surviving well, it may not matter how I'm socially accepted. It may actually be a way for me to escape and actually live, as my own authentic individual self. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that humans are social creatures, and there's there's always value in, of course, like having that self-reflection time and being alone. I think there is opportunity for us to like in connecting with one another and in understanding other people's experiences, we are able to create better lives for everybody. So there's, for example, this theory, I think it's called curb cut theory. And essentially, I guess years and years ago, back in the, I'm going to say back in the 90s. Wow, I just aged myself so much. They started creating, with regards to infrastructure, curbs that have, rather than have like a step down onto the street if you're crossing the street, a curb that actually leans down so that people who might have a wheelchair are
Right.
better able to access the street. But in creating these special curbs, not only were people who had wheelchairs able to access them, it also benefited people who were walking kids with strollers, people with shopping carts, people who, you know, might be on crutches, who might have felt or been easier to walk down the slope versus like walk down a step. Somebody who's on a bike or on rollerblades. So when we build infrastructure and when we advocate for one another, when it comes to ability or gender or whatever it is, there are repercussions that sometimes tend to benefit everybody as a result of it. So I think they're in really advocating for one another and advocating for environmental justice, social justice, all of these things. There are positive benefits that can come, even if like we might not be able to see it necessarily ourselves, but that will really improve the livelihoods of so many people and could, you know, improve your own life. So I think it's about approaching with that holistic perspective.
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually never thought about that in that way. That one change could sort of affect a lot of different types of like other people in that the entire ecosystem or whatever. Um, I kind of do want to kind of go over to like the environmental aspect of things. And get your thoughts about like greenwashing,
Yeah.
where like companies promote themselves as environmentally friendly, but without making substantial changes. And your thoughts on how, consumers can, discern between what's a genuine sustainable initiative and then what are like marketing tactics.
Yeah. So I will first say that we live in an imperfect world, and consumption itself, well, rather overconsumption, is what's driving the climate crisis. So there's no perfect sustainable product that exists, unfortunately. We obviously all need things in order to survive and to
Yeah.
live. So it's about doing the best that we can with what we have, and what we have access to. So with regards to greenwashing, I think there is a lot of it, especially lately, as brands are starting to recognize that consumers are really interested in supporting sustainable initiatives, whether it's, things that are made without any packaging, or products that use like upcycled ingredients that, like, tomatoes that would have gotten thrown out and they're making tomato sauce with it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think when it comes to greenwashing, brands are going to be putting information on their website and on these like product pages. If it's things like, if it has different types of certifications, I think there's a lot of empty, sort of shallow marketing with regards to greenwashing. Like if a big cleaning product is made with like 20% recycled plastic in the bottle itself, but they don't necessarily do anything else, like the product itself is still like uses all the same chemicals and other toxic ingredients. I think that's like a good example of greenwashing. When it comes to these certifications, it costs a lot of money to have these processes in place. And so if brands are paying a lot of money to have like a B Corp certification or to be FSC certified, like made from recycled paper, they're going to want to put that up front because they paid for it. They want people to know.
Yeah.
And brands that don't have any sort of certifications are going to be a lot more dodgy about their sustainability practices. So maybe they'll say, as a business, we're working on our sustainability by turning off the lights in our office at the end of the day, but like there's no sustainability information about the product manufacturing or anything like that. No information about, for example, if it's clothing, if there's no information about how the clothing is made and how people were treated, or if it was like ethically sourced or people were paid fair wages. I think that's a clear example of greenwashing. If there's not any information, or if it's really just kind of like smoke and mirrors and there's not too much detail, I think that's a good example of greenwashing if you're not able to really find the sources or find the certifications. Obviously, if you're going to a really, really tiny brand and they don't have certifications, it can be understandable because they do cost a lot of money. But I think brands that are really small, that do things really intentionally, they are going to be listing out that they use organic ingredients or their products are cruelty free or whatever it is, and share as much information as they can because they want people to know that that brand is transparent and honest and upfront about what they're doing. So I think it's about doing a little bit of research and just doing the best you can. I also want to share an accessibility note because I know not everybody knows where to find a lot of these products or might not have the financial means to purchase a lot of these products. So I think for people who don't necessarily have that privilege, for example, I think there's always a way to do better with what you can. So for example, if the only store that is nearby to you that you can buy things at, like shampoo or conditioner, whatever it is like a Target. And the only thing that you can buy is a product that's made with like 50% recycled plastic in the bottle itself. I think doing the best you can with what you have is always going to be the most sustainable option. So I don't want to shame or make anybody feel bad for those choices, but whenever you do have the choice, and you have the option, I definitely recommend doing a little bit of research and just like confirming that the brands that you're supporting are ones that are really upfront and honest about their practices.
Yeah. So I guess looking ahead, like what's your vision for the impact of intersectional environmentalism, like environmentalists, and all the other things that you're doing? Like what's sort of the impact that you would want to have happen?
Yeah. With IE, I think we're right now in a little bit of a development period. So we are redefining our mission. I guess we've never officially had a vision, but we are defining the work that we want to do. We want to obviously continue to create free resources around environmental justice and build community with one another and show up at different speaking engagements and work with different businesses to ensure that their practices are leaning towards environmental justice and not necessarily just like we're planting one tree for every product you buy, but more environmental justice focused. So we're excited to continue creating those resources. We have a bunch on our Instagram page and on our website. We just rolled out a new toolkit around how organic agriculture can help save the planet. So we'll continue working on that. And then with myself, I hope to just continue empowering people to create change in their own life, whether that is through whatever individual action they're able to take through composting or supporting farmers markets or walking instead of using a car or whatever it is, and just making things that are sustainable for their own lifestyle. So
nice.
that's it.
That's great. I know we're running out of time here. It kind of went by pretty quick. But we've got a couple questions for you. One being sort of what advice would you give somebody who wants to start paying more attention to intersectional environmentalism. What would you say to these people?
Yeah, only one piece. I would say to look into the environmental justice issues in their community, just like Google environmental justice issues and then your city or your neighborhood, and try to get involved in that, or look into really grassroots environmental justice groups in their area, go to a local community garden, and just connect with other people, learn about what everybody is working towards in terms of a more environmentally just future, whether that is, again, a community garden. Here in Brooklyn, there's a really cool group called the Bed-Stuy Clothes Swap that works towards sustainable fashion by hosting these clothing swaps. There's a group here called the No North Brooklyn Pipeline that is working against a pipeline that is being built in some Black and brown neighborhoods in Brooklyn. So those are just a couple of examples of different ones in the Brooklyn area, but there are so many different local issues in every community, and we have the most people power when we do things on a more local and on a more grassroots level. So that would definitely be my recommendation, is finding the community issues and getting involved.
Nice. What are you working on at the moment?
At the moment, just continuing to work on sustainable Sabs. I am in the middle of a 3-month buy nothing challenge that I call #spending pending. And I don't buy any clothing or accessories or skincare for 3 months to really show that you don't need to be buying a ton of clothing all the time in order to live a happy and fulfilled life. And I think that as somebody who has a somewhat influential platform, it's important to talk about that. I feel like there's so many influencers who are always bringing different clothing hauls home, and it's really an unsustainable practice, and I'm trying to do my best not to normalize that. So that is one exciting thing that I'm working on right now.
How's it going so far?
Good. I haven't bought any clothing or skincare products. I'm also not accepting gifted items from brands. So but I've done these challenges a couple different times before, and I'm already the 15th. So I think 4 days from now will be the halfway point. So I think I'm doing pretty good so far.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So where can people find you if they want to?
Yeah, I am on Instagram at Sustainable Sabs. I am also on TikTok and Threads and YouTube, all the same handles. And then if you want to follow IE, follow at Intersectional Environmentalist, or visit our website, intersectionalenvironmentalist.com.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a little shorter than normal, but I'm loving it. It was great, really good information. And we have to get you on again so we can have
definitely
a longer discussion. And
yes, I definitely have a lot more that I'd like to cover with you, because I think you're really treading into multiple areas that I think overlaps with so many different communities and people. So I'd love to have that conversation fully.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, bye. All right. So we just had Sabs Katz on. So what'd you think?
It was actually amazing. I, of course, because of all the different things that she's doing, so I have all these different ideas in my mind and things that I wanted to ask her. But I also realized that that there are quite a few things that we had in common. Of course, being Jewish, being one of them. So I wanted to actually really find out, because I think even being Jewish, I come from a different perspective, being a Yoruba, sub-Saharan African American as well, so I often consider myself a spiritual Yoruba, cultural Christian, theologically Jewish, and so I'm more Jewish practicing, than anything else. But but it's interesting. I think, there's some intersectionality there with all the different parts of me, that's shaping who I am. And so, yeah, definitely, I found her quite interesting to talk to, and yeah, and just getting some insight about, what matters to her and her own sensibility around the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm just sort of personally scratching the surface of intersectionality and understanding what that means for myself and the broader, community. And sort of how that plays a part in the way things are going and things are being run and all that kind of stuff. And so it's kind of cool to, hear a few examples of how that actually does happen, like the curb cutting, right? So like that, affects, it was for one particular person, but it affects a lot of different types of people,
Right.
and how it could help a lot of different types of people. We didn't talk about, maybe how it could hurt, but we didn't, I'm sure that
Yeah.
there's maybe some of that, but I'm guessing there probably is more of the how it helps than how it hurts, on
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
level.
In fact,
So,
I'm reading a book right now on critical race theory.
mhm,
And just in general, although it says critical race theory, but it's essentially found that it's based on critical theory. And critical theory is just finding out how the system, in a particular community affects its individual, or
mhm,
groups of people. And all it is just bringing up the situation that we're seeing and then asking questions. And that's what it is.
mm,
And so same with what she's doing is basically just seeing what people's issues are, the effects of systems,
mhm,
that we see in the community, and then questions that we ask about it, and then how people can then figure out what they need to do, or groups of people can figure out what they need to do for themselves to make the situation better.
mm,
So it's really about finding out, the effects, and then from that, figuring out what exactly happened, what caused that effect,
mhm.
and then asking questions about it. So it's very interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, we're certainly all affected. Doesn't matter, who it is, white, black, Latino, brown, Asian.
Yeah.
We are all affected by all of this.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, that was another good show.
definitely was. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we'll see everyone on the next one.
Excellent.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Green Carpet Interviews. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
This show was brought to you by Veg on the Edge, our vegan restaurant in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo. If you're in the area, be sure to stop by and check out our delicious plant-based dishes. Check out vegontheedge.com for more information.
To stay connected with us and learn more about conscious living, follow us on Instagram at Green Carpet Interviews. We love hearing from our listeners and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Green Carpet Interviews.